You know something's about to go sideways when your 27-year-old Chief Innovation Officer starts talking about replacing manual safety protocols with artificial intelligence during a Monday morning production meeting. The containment alarms in Base 7 were already running 15 decibels above normal, which meant the hydraulic press was developing stress fractures in the mounting bolts. That grinding sound meant trouble, but not the kind Victoria Sterling was about to create. I'm Dexter Reynolds, 49 years old, and I've been running operations at Great Lakes Defense Manufacturing for 16 years. Before that, I spent 12 years in the Navy working on nuclear reactor systems aboard submarines. You learn real quick that when something goes critical underwater, you better know how to contain it with what's in your toolkit. No calling tech support when you're 300 feet below the surface with a reactor running hot. Victoria was standing at the front of the conference room wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment, holding her tablet like it contained the nuclear launch codes. The smell of that kombucha she'd been pushing mixed with the machine oil from the floor made my stomach turn worse than rough seas ever did. She'd been here 6 months, hired straight from some Silicon Valley consulting firm that specialized in digital transformation strategies. "Team," she said, and I could already tell this wasn't going to be good. "We're implementing predictive maintenance algorithms across all production systems. Our current manual oversight protocols are creating inefficiencies in our operational throughput." I took a sip from my thermos, same one I'd been using for 14 years. The coffee was still hot, which meant the morning shift was running on schedule, unlike this meeting. The thermos had a small dent from when I dropped it during the USS Pittsburgh incident back in '98, reactor coolant leak that nearly went critical. We contained it manually because the automated systems couldn't process the cascade failure fast enough. "What exactly does that mean, Victoria?" I asked, setting the thermos down with a deliberate thunk. "It means we're upgrading to smart manufacturing protocols. AI-driven quality control, automated safety systems, real-time optimization across all defense production lines." She swiped at her tablet like she was conducting an orchestra. "Your management approach, Dex, feels very legacy-focused. It's not syncing with our digital evolution strategy." Legacy-focused. I stared at her for a moment, my hand unconsciously moving to tap my shirt pocket where I used to keep my radiation dosimeter badge. Old habit from the submarine days. The plant behind us was humming with 18 production lines manufacturing precision components for F-900-centered 35 fighters and Virginia-class submarines. We hadn't missed a Department of Defense deadline in 22 months. Our defect rate was 0.2% below industry standard. Our security clearance had never been questioned. But apparently that was legacy thinking. "You firing me, Victoria? It's not termination. It's a strategic realignment." She used that rehearsed tone they probably taught in her Stanford MBA program. "We need someone who can embrace technological integration without resistance to change. Someone who understands that AI can optimize processes beyond human capability." I could see Carl Anderson, our systems tech, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. He knew what I knew. Those smart systems she wanted to implement would bypass the manual verification protocols that the Department of Defense specifically required for classified components. You don't automate nuclear submarine parts without human oversight. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. "Victoria," I said, keeping my voice level, "these aren't consumer widgets we're making. These are classified defense components. The Navy doesn't want AI making decisions about reactor cooling systems or flight control surfaces." She waved her hand dismissively. That's exactly the kind of thinking that's holding us back. AI doesn't make mistakes like humans do. It doesn't get tired, doesn't get distracted, doesn't have bad days. It also doesn't know when to break protocol to prevent a meltdown, I replied. Sometimes the manual override is the only thing standing between normal operations and catastrophic failure. Janet Brooks, our QC manager, nodded slightly. She'd been here almost as long as I had. Wade Phillips, our best press operator, was looking between Victoria and me like he was watching a tennis match. These people understood manufacturing. They understood that experience matters. "The board has already approved the implementation," Victoria continued. "We're moving forward with or without your cooperation." I looked at the clock on the wall, 10:20 a.m. The mid-morning safety authentication was scheduled to run at 10:35. That authentication required my biometric clearance to verify the security protocols. Without it, the fail-safe system would assume a containment breach and shut down every line producing classified components. "All right," I said, standing up. "You want change?" "You got it." I didn't slam anything. Didn't raise my voice. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out my security badge, and slid it across the table toward her. The badge had level 7 clearance, higher than hers. Higher than anyone else's in the building except Harold Morrison, the owner. You've got 15 minutes, I said. Victoria looked confused. 15 minutes for what? To figure out how to run this place without me. The thing about defense manufacturing systems is they're built on layers of redundancy. You've got your basic machinery, then your control systems, then your safety protocols, then your security authentication. Each layer depends on the one below it. Pull out the wrong piece and the whole thing goes into lockdown faster than a reactor scram. The system will automatically engage fail-safe protocols at 10:35 if I don't authorize the security sync, I explained, walking toward the door. When that happens, every classified production line stops. Not pauses. Stops. The CNC machines go into safe mode. The assembly robots park themselves and the conveyor systems lock down. Victoria's confidence was starting to crack. The IT team said everything's cloud-based now. We can override any legacy restrictions. The IT team. 2 guys she'd hired because they had certificates in something called industrial IoT. They understood networks and databases. They didn't understand that some systems were deliberately isolated from networks for security reasons. Good luck with that. I walked through the plant floor one last time, past the milling machines that could turn titanium billets into turbine components with tolerances measured in microns. Past the welding stations where certified technicians joined classified alloys under argon atmosphere. Past the assembly line where workers I'd trained were putting together parts that would protect American servicemen overseas. The sound of the machinery was like a well-tuned reactor to me. The rhythmic pulse of the hydraulic systems, the high-frequency whir of the spindle motors, the steady hiss of the pneumatic actuators. After 16 years, I knew every vibration signature this place made. I could walk through here blindfolded and tell you which machine needed maintenance just by listening to the harmonics. Same way we monitored reactor coolant pumps on the Pittsburgh. When the frequency shifted even slightly, you knew trouble was coming. My phone buzzed as I reached the parking lot. 10:36 a.m., right on schedule. Security alert, authentication timeout. Classified production systems entering safe mode. I pulled out a small cigar. Cuban, picked it up during shore leave in Guantanamo back in '99, still had a few left from that box. I lit it up and leaned against my pickup, watching the loading dock through the exhaust smoke. In about 30 seconds, the forklift operators would stop moving classified materials. The drivers would start looking around, confused by the sudden silence. The automated scheduling system would start cascading delays through every contract we had with the Pentagon. My phone buzzed again, then again. The group chat was lighting up. Carl Anderson, our systems tech. Why are the robots parking themselves? All diagnostic readings normal. Janet Brooks, QC manager. Dashboard showing 0 active production on classified lines. Is this a drill? Wade Phillips, press operator. Lines 7 through 12, all showing emergency stop. Hydraulics are fine. What's happening? I took another draw on the cigar and looked up at the office windows on the second floor. Victoria was probably staring at screens full of red warning lights about now. The real-time production dashboard she'd installed last month was about to become very educational. Here's what she didn't understand. Those smart manufacturing protocols she wanted were already running, had been for 5 years. But they weren't controlled by some cloud-based AI system that could be hacked by foreign adversaries. They were controlled by security scripts I'd written, running on hardened servers in the basement that were older than her college degree, but more secure than anything connected to the internet. The safety authentication wasn't just checking measurements, it was the heartbeat of the entire classified operation. Every 90 minutes, it verified that all machines were running within tolerance, all security systems were active, and all production parameters were green. Miss that sync, and the system assumed something catastrophic had happened. Like a reactor scram, but for an entire manufacturing facility. My phone rang. Victoria Sterling, Chief Innovation Officer. I let it ring, let them sweat a little. The thing about 12 classified production lines suddenly stopping is it creates a cascade failure. Raw titanium backs up at receiving. Finished components can't move to secure shipping. Defense contracts that were supposed to deliver today are now sitting on dead conveyor belts. And the automated scheduling system, seeing 0 production capacity, starts pushing everything to tomorrow, then next week, then next month. By the time the Pentagon liaison calls asking where their submarine reactor components are, the damage is already done. Classified defense contracts don't have flexibility. When you miss a delivery date, you don't just lose money, you lose clearance. You lose future contracts. You lose everything. I finished my cigar and got in my truck. I had one stop to make before this was over. The drive to Harold Morrison's place took 25 minutes. Long enough for my phone to buzz 63 times with increasingly desperate messages. Long enough for Victoria to discover that rebooting the servers wouldn't help. Long enough for the first Pentagon liaison to call asking where their turbine components were. Long enough for the board members to start calculating how much money they were losing every minute. Harold's house sat on 20 acres outside town. Not fancy, just solid. Like everything he'd ever built. His workshop was bigger than most people's garages, filled with tools that actually got used. I found him at his workbench rebuilding a carburetor from a '68 Camaro SS. Harold Morrison was a man who understood the value of manual craftsmanship in a world increasingly obsessed with automation. "Shouldn't you be at work?" he asked without looking up. Harold Morrison was 71 years old and could still outwork most guys half his age. Built this company from nothing in 1992, when defense contractors were going out of business left and right after the Cold War ended. He'd found his niche in precision components, the kind of work that required both advanced machinery and human expertise. "Got realigned," I said. "My operational frequency didn't match their digital evolution." Harold set down his wrench and looked at me. Really looked at me. We'd been through this dance before. 8 years ago, when the previous CFO tried to outsource our quality control to Bangladesh, that didn't end well for the CFO. Harold had learned long ago that some things can't be replaced by cheaper alternatives. "Victoria," he asked. "Yep. Wants to replace manual safety protocols with AI. Says human oversight is inefficient." Harold wiped his hands on a shop rag and reached for a bottle of bourbon sitting on his workbench. Good stuff. The kind you sip, not gulp. He poured 2 glasses and slid one across to me. The ritual was familiar. Harold had been drinking the same brand since before I was born. "What's the damage? Full classified shutdown, 12 lines down, security authentication locked out. Probably cost them $350,000 in the first hour alone. Pentagon's gonna start calling soon." Harold's phone rang before I finished speaking. The old rotary phone he kept in the workshop because he said it was the only one that worked when the power went out. He answered on the 3rd ring, like he always did. "Morrison?" I could hear shouting from the other end of the line. Multiple voices, all talking at once, panic in their voices. The sound of people who had just realized they were in over their heads. Harold held the phone away from his ear and winked at me. He'd been expecting this call. Harold Morrison hadn't stayed in business for 32 years by underestimating the importance of experience. "Slow down, George," Harold said into the phone. "What's that?" "The plant shut down? How's that possible?" He was grinning like a cat that had found the canary cage unlocked. George Patterson was the board chairman, nice enough guy, but he understood defense manufacturing about as well as I understood quantum physics. He'd made his money in real estate before joining our board 5 years ago. Good at reading financial statements. Not so good at understanding why you can't just plug an AI system into classified defense production and expect everything to work. "Now, George," Harold continued, "I told you when I stepped back that operations was Dex's department. You don't mess with operations, especially when you're dealing with submarine reactor components and fighter jet systems." A pause. More shouting from the phone. I could make out at least 3 different voices, all talking over each other. "What do you mean Victoria fired him?" "That girl doesn't have the authority to fire the operations director, not without board approval. And certainly not without understanding what she's doing to our Pentagon contracts." More urgent voices from the phone. Harold's grin disappeared. He was starting to understand the full scope of what had happened. "Put me on speaker, George. I want to talk to the whole board." He gestured for me to come closer to the phone. This was going to be educational for everyone involved. "Gentlemen," Harold's voice took on that tone I remembered from when I was learning the ropes 16 years ago. The tone that said someone had made a very expensive mistake. "You've got yourselves a problem. You let that girl fire the one man who knows how to run that plant. Dex Reynolds isn't just an employee. He's the central nervous system of the entire classified operation. We can bring in consultants," someone said. "Probably Jenkins, the CFO. Hire specialists to get the systems back online. There are companies that specialize in industrial automation recovery." Harold laughed. Not a pleasant sound. The kind of laugh that comes right before you explain to someone exactly how much money they've just lost. Consultants? You think some outsider can walk in and understand 16 years of custom security modifications, workarounds, and institutional knowledge? That plant runs on relationships, not just procedures. Dex knows every machine, every operator, every quirk in the classified systems. He knows which hydraulic valve sounds wrong before it fails. He knows which temperature reading means you're about to lose a $50,000 turbine component. I took a sip of the bourbon. Harold was just getting started. More importantly, Harold continued, he's the only one with the security clearance and the technical knowledge to authorize those systems. The Navy doesn't want some consultant with a laptop accessing their submarine reactor protocols. They want someone they trust. Someone who's been cleared at the highest levels for 16 years. The silence on the other end was telling. They were starting to understand the magnitude of what Victoria had done. This wasn't like firing the marketing director or the HR manager. This was like removing the control rods from a nuclear reactor and wondering why everything was going critical. Every minute those lines are down costs you $5,200, Harold continued. You want to do the math on how much this little strategic realignment is going to cost. Because I can tell you right now, it's a hell of a lot more than Dex's salary. I could hear papers rustling, urgent whispers, board members doing damage calculations in real time. Someone was typing frantically on a laptop, probably pulling up the production schedules and contract penalties. Harold, we understand the situation is serious, George said, his voice smaller now. But Victoria has credentials. Stanford MBA. Experience with Fortune 500 digital transformations. She came highly recommended. George, Harold said, his voice getting quieter, which somehow made it more dangerous. I don't care if she has a PhD from MIT and a letter of recommendation from God himself. She doesn't understand defense manufacturing. She doesn't understand that when you're making parts for nuclear submarines, you don't experiment with untested AI systems. Another voice from the phone, maybe the corporate lawyer. What do you want, Harold? I want Dex reinstated, not as operations director. As chief security operations officer. Full authority over the classified floor. No interference from Victoria or anyone else. Double his current salary and restore all the security protocols she tried to disable. That's a significant increase in compensation, Harold. We'd need to justify that to shareholders. Harold's voice went completely flat. Every minute those lines are down costs you $5,200. We're at, what, 5 hours now? That's $1.56 million in direct losses. Add the contract penalties, the Pentagon reviews, the potential loss of security clearance, and you're looking at $10 million minimum. You want to negotiate Dex's salary, or you want to get back to making money? The math was brutal, and everyone knew it. Defense contracts aren't like commercial work. You miss a delivery deadline, and you don't just lose that contract. You get investigated. Your security clearance gets reviewed. Future contracts get delayed or canceled. The Pentagon doesn't forgive and forget. And one more thing, Harold continued. Victoria gets moved to something she can't break. Marketing, strategic partnerships, government relations, whatever makes her feel important. But she doesn't go near classified operations again. Not ever. She's very talented, Harold. Her recommendations came from companies that successfully implemented similar systems. I'm sure she is. But talent in the wrong place is like a Ferrari in a swamp. Doesn't matter how fast it can go if it's stuck in the mud, more urgent whispering, the sound of someone typing frantically on a laptop, a chair squeaking under stress. I could picture them in that boardroom, expensive suits and worried faces, finally realizing they'd let someone play Russian roulette with their most important contracts. We need time to discuss terms, George said finally. No, Harold cut them off. You need Dex back online in the next hour, or you're going to have 12 classified production lines sitting idle overnight. You know what that does to your delivery schedules? Your Pentagon contracts? Your stock price when this hits the defense industry news tomorrow morning? That got their attention. Nothing scared defense contractors like bad publicity and angry generals. The defense industry was small. Everyone knew everyone. Word traveled fast when a contractor couldn't deliver. Think about it this way, Harold said, his voice returning to normal conversational tone. You're not paying Dex more money. You're buying insurance. Insurance that your Pentagon contracts get delivered on time. Insurance that your security clearance stays intact. Insurance that you stay in business. A long pause. Then George's voice resigned. Fine. Draft the contracts. Dex gets Chief Security Operations Officer. Full classified authority, salary increase as discussed. Victoria moves to strategic development, but Dex has to get those lines running today. Harold looked at me and winked. Dex is 20 minutes away. Have the paperwork ready when he walks in the door. He hung up and poured himself another bourbon. Feels good to remind them who actually runs things around here. You didn't have to do that, I said. Hell, I didn't. I built that company with 70-hour weeks and missed family dinners, missed your high school graduation to fix a broken lathe on a Sunday. I'm not about to watch some kid with a Stanford MBA destroy what took 32 years to build. Harold had started Great Lakes Defense Manufacturing in 1992 with 3 used machines and a dream. Worked 7 days a week for the first 6 years. Slept on a cot in the office more nights than he slept at home. By the time I joined in 2008, he'd built it into the most reliable defense contractor in the Great Lakes region. The kind of place where Pentagon procurement officers knew they could count on quality and delivery every single time. She means well, I said about Victoria. Just doesn't understand how classified systems actually work. Probably never seen the inside of a submarine or watched a reactor scram. Road to hell, Dex, road to hell. Harold finished his bourbon and stood up. Come on, let's go watch you take your company back. The drive back to Great Lakes took 30 minutes. Long enough for my phone to stop buzzing with panicked messages and start buzzing with different messages. Lawyers calling about contract details, accountants wanting to verify salary numbers, Pentagon liaisons asking about security protocols and delivery schedules. The parking lot looked like a disaster zone. Defense transport trucks backed up to the highway, drivers standing around smoking and checking their phones. The second shift had shown up early, confused about why nothing was moving. Supervisors were walking around with clipboards trying to look busy while everything sat dead. I walked through the plant floor like I owned the place, which in a way I guess I did now. The machinery was silent, except for the hum of the ventilation systems. 12 classified production lines worth of equipment sitting idle because one person didn't understand the difference between innovation and destruction. The workers who saw me coming started gathering around. These were people I'd hired, trained, worked alongside for over a decade. They looked relieved to see me, like sailors seeing the rescue ship on the horizon. Lines coming back up, Mr. Reynolds? Wade Phillips asked. One of my best press operators, been here 8 years. Give me 10 minutes, Wade. We'll have you back to making parts. Victoria was in the conference room, surrounded by her digital transformation team and half the board. When I walked in with Harold behind me, the room went quiet. Victoria looked like she'd been through a washing machine, her perfect hair was disheveled, and there were coffee stains on that expensive blazer. The tablet she'd been holding like a shield was sitting forgotten on the table. George Patterson stood up and handed me a folder. Contracts signed. Welcome back, Dex. As Chief Security Operations Officer, I opened the folder and scanned the terms. CSOU title, $195,000 salary, complete classified operational autonomy, authority to implement Navy-grade security protocols, hiring authority for security team. Everything Harold had negotiated, plus some things I hadn't expected. System's been down for 5 hours, I said, setting the folder on the table. Cost you about $1.56 million in lost classified production. Another $400,000 in delayed shipments. Pentagon confidence. That's harder to calculate, but it's going to take months to rebuild. Victoria looked up at me, her eyes red from what I assumed was either stress or tears, maybe both. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked like she understood the magnitude of what she'd tried to do. The board said. They said we need to. She started. I know what the board said. I walked to the control terminal on the wall. Here's how this works going forward. You handle strategic development and government relations. You're actually good at explaining what we do to people who don't understand manufacturing. But the classified floor belongs to me. I placed my thumb on the biometric scanner. The screen flashed green. Authorization accepted, Victoria. You're not stupid. You're just inexperienced. There's a difference. I began entering the restart sequence, muscle memory from years of emergency drills. The AI systems you want to implement, some of them might actually be useful, but not for classified work. Not for systems where human judgment is the last line of defense. The plant came alive around us, the distant hum of motors starting up. The whir of conveyor belts beginning to move. the rhythmic pulse of the hydraulic presses coming online. Music to my ears, like the sound of a reactor coming back online after maintenance. Lines will be back at full classified production in 45 minutes, I said, finishing the restart procedure. Your job is to work with me, not around me. You understand the business side, I understand the technical side. Together, we might actually build something worth having. Victoria nodded, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, but also more human somehow. I thought I could make things better, more efficient. I softened my tone. She was young, inexperienced, but not malicious. Just someone who'd been dropped into a world she didn't understand with instructions to fix things that weren't really broken. Victoria, efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes the slow way is the safe way. Sometimes manual verification prevents catastrophic failure. You wouldn't want AI making decisions about your airplane's engines while you're flying, would you? She actually smiled at that, just a little, I guess not. Harold was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. How'd she take it? Better than expected. I think she's starting to get it now. Good. Come on, let's go see the magic happen. We walked out onto the plant floor together. The transformation was already underway. Conveyor belts were moving classified materials from station to station. The CNC machines were spinning back to life, their computer-controlled precision turning raw titanium into finished components. Workers were returning to their positions, checking their equipment, getting back into the rhythm they knew by heart. Wade Phillips waved from Press Station 7. Looking good, Mr. Reynolds. Running sweet as honey over here. That's what I like to hear, Wade. Janet Brooks appeared at my elbow, clipboard in hand. Security parameters are all green. No damage from the shutdown. We'll be back to full classified efficiency within the hour. Outstanding. How's the team morale? Through the roof. Word's already spreading that you're back as CSOU. People are talking about the apprenticeship program you mentioned too. She grinned. I think you've got the most loyal workforce in the state now. Over the next few hours, I made my rounds, checking each classified production line, talking with the operators, making sure everything was running smoothly. Carl Anderson had the computer systems purring like a well-tuned reactor. Wade Phillips was coordinating with the transport drivers to get classified shipments back on schedule. By 6 p.m., we'd recovered most of the lost production. Pentagon contracts that should have shipped that morning were loaded and rolling out the door. The automated scheduling system had recalculated everything, and we were back on track for the week. Harold found me in my new office, the CSOU office with windows overlooking the entire classified floor. Sounds good out there. Sounds like how it should. We'll be fine. Better than fine. Actually, I'm going to implement that apprenticeship program we talked about, and Victoria's not wrong about some of the AI applications. We just need to be smart about where we use them. Harold nodded approvingly. Smart. What about the Pentagon contracts? Damage control starts tomorrow? But our reputation is solid. One bad day doesn't erase 22 months of perfect delivery. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the sounds of the plant, the steady rhythm of classified production, the hum of precision machinery, the occasional call from one worker to another. It was the sound of people making things that mattered, creating value, doing work that protected American servicemen overseas. Sometimes the old ways work best. You just have to know when to use them, and more importantly, you have to have the courage to stand up for what works when someone tries to fix what isn't broken. Because at the end of the day, you can't automate experience and you can't download wisdom. In a world rushing toward automation, the most valuable currency isn't data or algorithms. It's the wisdom that comes from years of watching systems fail and learning how to prevent it. Real security doesn't come from the latest technology. It comes from understanding that every system, no matter how smart, still needs someone who knows when to pull the plug.